My name is Neliswa Nomajana, as I was introduced. And last year I was doing my M1 in clinical psychology at UWC, and I was supposed to be doing my internship in this year, but I'm here, and unfortunately I couldn't for some reason. But I will not dwell into that for now. So, just a brief of who I am. So Neliswa is a young black woman who is coming from the Eastern Cape originally, and I assume that every black African is coming from the Eastern Cape who is in the Western Cape, but that's not the case. So my topic is too little and too late. And the reason for that is because, the reason I start from where I come from, my history, is because of my experience. So I am born of parents who are illiterate. So they never went to school, both my parents. And I'm coming from an environment which is very underprivileged in the deep rural areas of the Eastern Cape, where we at my time and even now, there were no computers, no library, no resources at all, like basic resources that are needed for learners to be advanced. And unfortunately, that's still the case even now. And the setting where I come from, there was not even something that we call career guidance. So in my time, I only knew that if I want to be educated, I should be a teacher or a nurse or a doctor. Nothing else that I knew of. And that's because of the lack of resources in my area where I come from. And the fact that I'm born of, and I was raised by parents who are illiterate, and there was no kind of support in terms of being someone in life and going to school and going to the higher education. So I was kind of self-driven to say to myself that I want to break the cycle of poverty and uneducation in my family and in my village, and to a point that when I finished my matric in year 2000, I told myself that I'm moving to the city of Cape Town, which was the first time when I got into at UWC to get into a place with multicultural and multiracial, multi-races. It was my first time to have an encounter with a colored person, yes, and with a white person in other races, which is something that contributed to some of my experiences, difficulties when I got into higher education. And the first thing that was a disadvantage was a language. So when I started my undergrad, language was a big issue because I went to a Xhosa school, where everything was taught in Xhosa, even history or biology or any other subject was taught in my vernacular language, which made it very difficult even when I wrote my matric and when I started my undergrad training. Language was a big issue, and let alone thinking about studying psychology or whatsoever. So when I did my undergrad, I did social work because that was one of the things that I knew of in the village where I came from. So with lack of support, academic support, lack of any kind of support coming from that setting, and even in the institution, in class where we were about 40 plus students. So the focus was, I believe the focus was just on having the students to pass from first year to the second year, and that by lecturers. And for me, all I wanted was to get a degree and get a good job. Obviously, I had my fears, fear of failure, and that also caused low self-esteem, you know. And obviously, when you have all that, you won't even have, you even fear to raise your hand in the class and to ask a question, because obviously you will feel that I'm not capable, I'm not good enough, I won't be understood, and everything is just, everyone is just moving forward and looking for people who are talking and who can ask questions, who are eloquent. And that made things very difficult. And with the lack of mentoring, that even made things worse. So after graduation, of course, I got the job, and I never knew of a career called psychology until I did a course in psychology, like an undergrad course as a requirement. And upon questioning, because I knew for a fact that where I come from, there are psychological issues which are not dealt with, and we don't know of a psychologist. We only know of a social worker as a helping profession. And I had an interest into studying this, and then did my honors, and then did my master's. So the question, too little and too late, comes to where I did my master's degree, which I found very challenging, like very challenging in all ways, emotionally, academically. And I even began to question my intellectual capacity or ability because of the contextual issues where I come from. And now, even being a mother of two, I was afraid to raise a question of color in terms of when it comes to supervision and mentors. Because when you get into a psychology department, the first question that I asked, where are our people? And our people being the black skin. So my kids, I have two kids, a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old. So they don't understand the difference between a white and like the color skin. So my boy, a 7-year-old, is light in complexion, and he would refer to himself as peach. And my daughter, a 5-year-old, refers to herself as brown. So I'm also brown. So my son is peach. And he refers to his fellow learners who are white and colored as peach. So he doesn't see a difference between himself and the fellows, the so-called whites and coloreds. So I had a fear, and I questioned the fact that there's a lack of black, or so to say brown, skin psychologists and people that I felt that we relate with, people who will understand where I come from, people who will understand my my current situation. Even though that I want to change the cycle, to break the cycle, because I felt that I want to go back and help my community. But when I got into the training, the mentorship and the supervision, I felt that these people do not understand where I come from. And for them, it is about getting me to pass and to forget that I lacked the eloquence, I lacked the language, not only the English as a language, but the language. Psychology has a language of its own. And knowing that psychology is coming from, it's a Western career, it's coming from the West, it's not a South African, and it's not in a South African context. It doesn't understand South African context. So it was quite difficult and challenging for me to get into the program and transitioning from where I come from to this field and to this context. So you find the mentor that I had last year was white, and it was very difficult to have a connection with him because it doesn't understand where I come from, and he doesn't understand why why is it that my journey, my training is different from others? Why is it so different? Why is it so difficult for me to understand or to, you know, to excel academically and intellectually, if I may put it that way? So I felt that even though the kind of support was provided, but I felt that it was too late and it was too little, because the M1 is, I wouldn't say it's for a year, it's 12 months, I would say it's 10 months. And the kind of work that you do in M1, it's a lot of work. And for someone who needs a mentor, and you get a white mentor who does not understand where you come from, and you don't even have a connection, so it gets very difficult. So I liked what Dr. Tabi said, that black students should be mentored and supervised by fellow black professionals, I would put it that way, because I feel that they will understand where we are coming from. They will understand who I am contextually, because even with us blacks, we are different. There are those blacks who are coming from privileged families, and there are those who are coming from underprivileged families. So there is a big difference in that. So we need people who will understand where we are coming from, who will not put too much pressure on us, who will support us, who will nurture us into being excellent clinicians and perform well academically and otherwise. Thank you.